meeting is being recorded.
Welcome, everybody, to Boston 9/11 Truth. Today is Thursday, January 23rd, 2025. And today we have a very special guest, live from Florida, Phil Restino. He's been a part of the part of the 9/11 Truth movement since the early days, I think around 2007. Is that right, Phil?
Uh, Back to 2005. Yeah,
2005. Yeah,
yes, summer of '05.
right. And he ran the South Central Veterans for Peace with Bob Bowman. And after Bob Bowman's passed away, the chapter got named the Bob Bowman Veterans for Peace chapter. And he's been very instrumental in promoting 9/11 truth, very vigilant. So we're going to start pretty soon. I just want to quickly go over some of our guidelines. During Bill's talk, um, we will have no interruptions. Everyone will be muted. And following his talk, there'll be a Q&A. And during the Q&A, everyone is to be respectful, polite, decorum, no personal attacks. Of course, disagreement and debate are allowable as long as the content, not the person, is confronted. Voice is kept at a speaking level of sound, no shouting, and no interrupting each other. So the second part of our meeting after the Q&A of our guests will be our agenda items. So any off-topic comments or questions are to be held to the final portion of the meeting, the agenda portion. But remember, this is a 9/11 truth group, and all topics have to have something to do with 9/11 only. So with that being said, if we can get started and welcome Phil to Boston 9/11 Truth. We're
Thank you,
really honored
Susan.
to have you here.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in 9/11 Truth, and the work you've done in Florida.
Okay. Let's see. I moved to Florida from Boston the end of '01, after 9/11, and '02 I ended up in early '02 I ended up in Daytona Beach, caring for my grandparents, and um, the internet was still uh, nothing like it is today. I got involved in I had time because I was a live-in caregiver. I got involved in the internet, doing my high school reunion thing, and then that's when I started stumbling on alternative media. You know, um, when they launched that war in Iraq, you know, based on weapons of mass destruction, and then there weren't any. I was just blown away. I was blown away by the whole spectacle of it all. Um, it was surreal how they were building up attack on Iraq, and the terrorist and the bad guy with the beard, and um, so at first I wanted to do something about these wars. There was no weapons of mass destruction. What's going on here? People should be outraged. Uh, uh, and I got involved with the local anti-war group in '04, the protest on the corner, sign wave and all that, stop the war. And then in '05, um, I remember seeing the hearings for the Downing Street memo, It was that had come out where it had been leaked by someone in the Tony Blair administration that the um, the U.S. and the UK conspired to lie about weapons of mass destruction, and that was televised. So much was used to be available online and televised on C-SPAN and a lot of 9/11 truth in the early days was I thought more available or less censored. And anyway, um, I started to look at that. There were members of Veterans for Peace involved in that, and Cold Pink and what have you. And then in the summer, Cindy Sheehan, the Gold Star mother, um, she had been getting attention in the national media and everything. And then when a plane went down with a whole bunch of troops that were killed, U.S. troops, George Bush said they died for a noble cause. And then Cindy Sheehan had just spoken at the Veterans for Peace convention, and they escorted her down to Texas, where she camped out outside George Bush's ranch. And that's when I noticed the Veterans for Peace on television. They had these T-shirts with the helmet and the dove, and I looked them up, and I had been in the army for a short time, and did one enlistment, and I said, I'm not a war veteran or anything like that. Would I be able to join? And they said yes, as long as you served in the service, no matter when and where. So I figured if I could get this chapter, the Central Florida chapter, going and put it in place and bring it to the local veterans posts, the VFWs and the American Legions, that, the guys that belonged to it that were Vietnam veterans, they would, uh, hopefully they would get mad and not let what happened to them as far as being lied into Vietnam happen to this generation of young troops being lied into Iraq and Afghanistan and all that. And they got mad, all right. They got mad at me, for bringing the information to them. Uh, and soon after at that time I was talking just the Downing Street memo and the Project for the New American Century and all that, the neocons' plans for the war. And then I got somebody gave me in the summer of the 2005 a DVD from the powerhour.com in plain sight. And it was a 9/11 truth. And once I saw that, that's when I really wanted to reach out to others and say, you got to see this. This is crazy. It's so clear that uh, those buildings didn't come down by fire. That there was a false flag attack, um, and like I say, they got mad, all right. They got mad at me. And I was not a war veteran, and I didn't understand the brotherhood and all that, not having been there myself. And, I guess when I had to learn this over time that uh, they when they had other young troops in harm's way, they all gathered round, and would never speak out. And over the years, I've found that with so many, it was a lonely business, as some of you know, being an activist in your own community with 9/11 Truth. It, there weren't a whole lot of us, but we did a lot. We had a weekly demonstration in Daytona Beach on the drive home every Thursday night, where the busiest intersection was, and when the lights turned red, we would hand out the 9/11 Truth DVDs and flyers. We wouldn't just hold signs, and we did that every Thursday for over 9 years. We finished up the end of 2014. We finally stopped. People weren't interested anymore. Um, but I'd say we handed out tens of thousands of 9/11 Truth DVDs and the flyers, information, and we pretty much saturated our community, East Central Florida, Greater Daytona Beach, and our chapter of Central Florida Veterans for Peace. We covered the greater Orlando area over to greater Melbourne, all the way up to greater Jacksonville. And uh, we had a pretty strong chapter. And, uh, you know, it would have been, I think we would have been more effective if we had a war veteran, be it a Vietnam veteran or an Iraq war veteran in the leadership role as opposed to myself. But we did the best we could. And I was hoping to turn it over to one of them, but I ended up in the leadership role. And we did attract some war veterans, and that's how I learned. We'd have a lot of the Iraq veterans come up to us on the corner, or in one of our presentations somewhere, uh, thanking us for what we're doing and saying, "You're right, this whole thing is bullshit." That it's a waste. But they couldn't stand with us because it's kind of like the firefighters. To a man, the firefighter can come up and say, absolutely right, the fires didn't blow up those buildings. But to come out in front of all the rest of the firefighters, they just couldn't do it. There's such a fear of being ostracized, and a legitimate fear of being ostracized. And I was thinking earlier, a good example of that was in those early years. There was a TV show, I forget the name of it, but it was about firefighters, and it was shortly after 9/11. And the actor Daniel Sunjata, I believe it is,
Mhm.
um, he had a role in the series where he was actually saying, talking about the project for the new American century, the neocons who had planned this war on terror, and questioning the official story. And he tried, but that was taboo, taboo. And so I think that's a big obstacle we have faced all these years, and it's just now starting to loosen up a bit, where um, you have some mainstream folks with large audiences like Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens or Jimmy Dore, who now that they're free from their network jobs and have their own platforms, they're able to risk uh, questioning 9/11. You know, uh, uh, it's a shame it's taken 20 plus years to get there, and millions of people killed and maimed. And that's what breaks my heart, knowing that people are getting killed in the name of this lie, you know. Um, anyway, uh, I think I can only speak as far as my experience as just a local on the ground activist organizer. Um, and we did put a lot of years into our activism down here, as Sue could tell you. Um, and there was a lot of lessons, a lot of disappointments, but I was listening to Andy Steele's interview of the firefighters for 9/11 Truth the other day. Um, uh, Eric, a lawyer, and Raul, I forget his last name, but the other
Well,
fire chief. Thank you. And they were also talking about how difficult it was to be amongst your brothers there, the fellow firefighters, and to get this out. Um, and the Raul was talking about the cognitive dissonance. Um, and I have a family member in New York who's been a volunteer fireman since the 60s, and he's in his late 70s. He still drives the truck, and this is just outside New York City. So
Wow.
even though it's volunteer, I mean, they're busier than a lot of paid fire departments elsewhere. And they've seen it all. And he still can't get his head around 9/11 uh, being, I mean, he's college educated, very smart guy, and he can't go there. He, even to me, a family member outside of the firehouse, away from the guys, he still he sent me the fire chief's analysis of the 9/11, and I've suggested AE 911 truth, and just the fact that fires cannot make, well, wait a minute, fires fueled by office furnishings, and Bob Bowman used to say this, office furnishings and kerosene-based jet fuel cannot make two 110-story steel frame concrete buildings blow up into dust and fall in perfect symmetry and nearly free fall speed. I mean, and I really believe it's that simple. I don't think we need to go into what temperatures melt steel, and was the plane, was it a plane or a missile, or we don't need to go there. I mean, that's enough right there. And I think simplicity is something else that we learned from our experience about just overwhelming people with all kinds of stuff. you know Keep it simple, keep it short, and and because by spreading it out to all this other stuff that you can debate, missile or a plane, uh, 4,000 degrees versus 1,500, you know what I mean? It's uh, what that does is invite debate and disagreement and muddying the water. It takes away from, hey, look, the official story just can't work. It takes away from that, and it allows uh, for us to more easily be called conspiracy theorists or nutcases or what have you. And so we mentioned uh, 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 firefighters for 9/11 truth. And I remember when they first started up, I had read an article online, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday by Eric Lawyer, and they had just started, and they have a wonderful, I wish I had the printout of their trifold flyer. Um, and we still use that today. Well, we're no longer a we, but I keep a bunch on the front seat of the car, and you go around and you see in the Home Depot parking lot or what have you, you'll see a firefighter emblem on a vehicle, be it a truck or whatever, and just take the flyer out and put it on the windshield, and we used to have our contact information on it, but don't have that right now. But in
Is
the actual,
is your
go
group
ahead.
is your group still active?
Not really, no.
No.
What happened was, and I had to move from Daytona to Jupiter in South Florida. I live with my mom who's got Alzheimer's now, and so I've gotten, but after the 20th anniversary, Sue, of 9/11, we would do, like I say, we stopped the weekly demo at the end of 2014, because by that time Iraq and all had slowed down quite a bit, and um, but and Osama bin Laden had been found finally. Anyway, that's a whole nother.
Oh, it sure is. Yeah.
Right. But people had lost interest, and it had been years. But each September 11th, we would do our annual 9/11 Truth Rally in Daytona Beach, and um, after the 20th, we just people, our fellow activists were literally dying off, and that was the sad thing. We just couldn't get new blood into our groups with the anti-war and all that. And 9/11 was the reason for the 9/11 wars. So I could tell you a lot about my experience with the anti-war movement because I was a chapter leader. I was involved with the national leadership, and the I believe that however it was done, the anti-war movement would not uh, make 9/11 truth part of their program, and they poo-pooed it, um, at least from the national level. And there were quite a few chapters of Veterans for Peace, and our Central Florida chapter and the San Diego chapter were probably the two strongest chapters that we included 9/11 truth. And San Diego, their Veterans for Peace chapter actually would not let them uh, make 9/11 truth as part of their chapter. They had to do outside the Vets for Peace chapter. So I think our chapter, and there were quite a few chapters around the country. We were the only ones, and we had Bob Bowman, Colonel Bob Bowman, and the former director of Star Wars, the Star Wars program with the Pentagon. He was a member of our chapter, and uh, you couldn't ask for a more credible pedigree. The Colonel Bob Bowman, a fighter pilot, was actually an interceptor pilot. Before going to the Pentagon and doing the Strategic Defense Initiative programs in the 70s. And he even said, there's no way in heck, as a former interceptor pilot, he could tell you there's no way in, he wouldn't swear. Bob Bowman was such a gentleman, but I'll say it, there's no way in hell that four known to be hijacked jumbo jet airliners fly around the Northeast corridor of the United States for an hour and a half and not be intercepted. And these are like the two basic things, the one about fire blowing up the buildings and the interceptors. I really believe that's all we need to put out there and say, explain that, don't you, question that. And but we took the firefighters for 9/11 truth flyers, and on it we basically put that little statement, in there. uh, for years, millions of people have been died, including 6,800 U.S. troops, based on this 9/11 lie. How long are we going to remain silent? You know, and I think the outreach, um, it's still very frustrating. Uh, and I was talking to a guy from the USS Liberty, one of their veterans earlier, and uh, they've run across the same thing for 50 years with the Liberty, trying to get justice for that. They uh, they were able to get the veterans of foreign wars to pass a resolution at their convention, and I believe it was 2014, calling official resolution calling for the investigation into the attack on the USS Liberty by Israel. And then in 2017, at the 50th anniversary, the American Legion, they were also able to get that same resolution passed at national. And that's all well and good, but I think those resolutions can be used. What do we do you're not going to have a congressman, uh, uh, they're not, the government's not going to do this for us. It's got to, the pressure's got to come from we, the people. And, and I was saying, how many interviews you'll do on Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens or what have you. Um, it's like the early days of 9/11 truth with loose change and all that. And that they were actually having uh, events that were covered by C-SPAN, 9/11 truth events and such. But it didn't get us anywhere. I really believe the pressure has to come from the people, much like what happened with the Vietnam War, when there was enough public resistance to it, opposition, it did have an effect. Um, and
For
so
just
how
a
do
little
we
bit
get,
longer, we're giving up to 60% off our high quality magnesium.
Sorry,
okay,
someone was not muted. Sorry.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, but this is what I'm hoping to uh, put out there this evening is I really believe we've got to find other ways to get our fellows, to rally around something and that they can put their teeth into, uh, like a resolution. And I was talking to the fella from the Liberty. I'm saying, can we try to get the local veterans posts to maybe take these resolutions and vote on it as a post, where they'd have to, it would be presented. It's much like what we had to do with our Veterans for Peace. Our chapter was the chapter that proposed the resolution to impeach Obama for the same war crimes we called for impeaching George Bush, and boy, did we take a lot of heat for that. Um, but what had happened was the first year was because Obama, he got in office in the first few days, he started bombing another country, Pakistan, killing a bunch of civilians there. And one of our members wrote an article, Impeach Obama, and that then one of our members said, let's take it up as a chapter. And when it's presented as something for a chapter to vote on, I think there's like a detachment from, as far as, being fear of being ostracized by the rest of the guys, if it's like an official resolution for something to vote on, it's like a thing, and so we voted on it. It passed. My best friend was Roberto. He was a black fella. It was really awkward because this was all in the first days of Obama's term, and it failed at national in '09. We ran it again in 2010. At this time, we were reaching out to the other chapters and asking them to vote on the resolution as a chapter. So what that involved was getting the members to not just say, yeah, I agree, or yeah, I don't think it's right. It actually was something you could grab onto, something almost physical. And in 2011, we got it passed at national, but then the national leadership stomped on it, wouldn't do anything with it. But I think the same can be done with the 9/11, and I wanted to explore that. You have Congressman Kurt Weldon, who has a lot of years as a firefighter, not just a congressman, and he's been calling, trying to get a presidential commission because he knows Congress isn't going to do it. Um, and I wanted to find out from these firefighters, can we also ask local firehouses or fire unions or what have you? I don't, veterans have their veterans posts, but have something similar. But okay, but vote on what? Whether 9/11 was an inside job or not, or something that's a thing like a resolution. And and then I'm trying to think of there's already in existence the Bobby McIlvane Act that can be uh, presented. Someone in Congress has to present it. And yes, I've just been saying Congress can't really count much on them. But this is something that our local, our fellows, we the people can grab onto, not just wake up to, but actually something that can be used to uh, create a little bit more heat, where who knows, maybe eventually get to the level of like the American public was opposed to the Vietnam War, maybe to finally get to that kind of opposition, public opposition, that it would force something that the government was not going to do on its own. Um, so these are things I was hoping to explore more. And uh, I just, and I really believe that that nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. I'm a firm believer in those trifold flyers that you download and print double-sided and fold them in threes, because people will read those. Yes, there's glossy cards and all kinds of really nice stuff, but for some reason, the physicality of a trifold flyer, people are able to read them, leave them on you're in the doctor's office, leave them on the book rack or what have you. Whenever I go to the VA for a doctor's appointment or something, I'll leave flyers there. Um, uh, I keep some on the front seat of my car. Also the USS Liberty. I know this is for 9/11 Truth, but I keep the 9/11 firefighters for 9/11 Truth flyers on the front seat of the car. I also have little stampers. Americans are waking up. AE911truth.org. And
Oh, cool. You can put that on dollar bills.
Yeah, and when I pay my bills, the little I stamp them on the envelopes.
That's wonderful.
The junk mail. I remember seeing Andy Rooney on 60 Minutes do a thing on junk mail and the postage paid return envelopes. And his thing was writing, a note on it, giving him his peace of mind and sending it back. But you take the same thing and drop in the 9/11 Truth flyer, or just get a stamper made, for 25, 30, 35 bucks, get a stamper made and things like that.
Stamp from our architects and engineers, or did you make it up yourself?
Made it myself. I just,
that's awesome.
I mean, I really believe that it's going to come from we, the people. And one thing, the DVDs, over recent years, my sister and others who are more current than I am with technology, they said, Phil, you're handing out these DVDs. People don't play DVDs anymore. The computers don't even come with the drives. It's like handing out an 8-track tape. It's and so I think, and this is where having young blood, new blood in the movement helps. But now you have the QR codes, and I was thinking about our old days on the corner where we would hand out flyers and DVDs, and I mentioned the postcard before, the glossy or whatever, and you can get these UR codes. Is that what they're called? QR codes? Yes.
QR codes, right.
Yes. And that'll scan it, and it could take you anywhere, to a website, to a video, to what have you, and keep it simple. That was one of the things I wanted to try, but what happened was we just fizzled out, because we knew that the DVDs weren't cutting it anymore. People weren't even using them anymore. And what could we do differently to reach our fellows? I'm babbling on and on, but it's been, like I say, I got involved with this in 2005, and still to this day, some days you just feel like crying. This is so obvious, so provable, so wrong, and so many people are getting slaughtered because of this. And another thing, I see the TV ads for tunnels to towers, where this group helps disabled veterans and firefighters and their widows and what have you, and helps them get housing and such. And I see these guys with no legs and arm, no, and yes, thank you for your service. Yes, take care of them. Yes, it's important, but
Stop
They
using
died
them
on
as
this
cannon
lie.
fodder.
Yes, and they're in that condition because they were sent in the name of the American people on the American people's dime to a pre-planned war, which was based on this lie and false flag attack, which is so easily provable. And it, it's just so hard to break through that. They can't look at this. And I think if we really want to honor our fallen and those who have made the sacrifice, if we really want to honor them, we need to get to the people that are truly behind uh, sending them into harm's way, you know, and that's 9/11. The 9/11 lie was the justification for the 9/11 wars, and I see all these veterans, God bless them. They went and put their lives on the line and had to do things that they'd have to live with for the rest of their lives, or had things done to them that they have to live with the rest of their lives. And uh, I wish we could get more of them to just be like an Eric Lawyer, a firefighter who also couldn't go there. How dare you even suggest that our government would do a 9/11 false flag, to the point of actually getting real about it, and then speaking out about it. And if you ask him, it's been a lonely business for him too, but he's persisted. um, uh, we have an opportunity now with people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owen, people that would never touch this because it's a career ender. With their own platforms, more and more people. But even with waking up more and more people, it's like waking up to JFK. Sure, uh, everybody, no kidding, everybody knows the government did it, but there's nothing to grab onto, to put forward, to force action, to force an actual investigation. That's what I think. We have to find something that people can grab onto and push to force an actual investigation. I like what back in the late 2000s, 09, 2010, in New York City, the NYC Can, what they were doing was getting petitions from New Yorkers to force an investigation into the World Trade Center towers coming down.
That was
And they
the
had
High Rise Initiative, right?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
and Manny Badillo and other, Bob McIlvane and some other 9/11 families they were actually running TV ads on cable, NY1 or whatever it is. They were really starting to have an effect, and like we've seen with other things, the courts wouldn't look at it, and they find a reason not to look at it. But that was something that they were able to. It was an instrument of sorts that people would not only just say I agree or sign a petition. It was something that could be used to force an investigation.
Enactment.
Yes, and I think, I really believe that's what we need to find somehow, whether it be the Bobby McIlvane World Trade Center Investigation Act or something like that, where it, we need some kind of instrument to force
Are you
action.
familiar, Phil, with the PAPA, Protecting All Protectors Alliance?
Yes, but not as familiar as I need to be.
Yeah, because that's made a lot of headway with the firefighters. Headway
Yes,
that Eric Lawyer previously could not make. We actually, for 3 years in a row, sent Eric Lawyer, Richard Gage,
Right.
Raul Angulo,
Yes.
and later on Tony Robbins
Paul Cayley.
and Paul Cayley. Thank you, Gene. To the NFPA.
Yes.
NFPA conferences are firefighter safety conferences that are held every year. And the success has been enormous, huge breakthrough. And of course, Raul Angulo is key to this because he writes the fire safety manual.
Right. Yeah.
That had, he was doing this before he woke up to 9/11, which thanks to Eric Lawyer, he did wake up to 9/11. And he was highly respected in the firefighter community. And for him to be participating with the presentation of Building 7 just was incredibly influential. And they do have a petition online, which, Gene, help me out here. How many signatures have they gathered so far?
I think it's a little over 1,000.
Yes, of firefighter professionals, whether they be firefighters or fire safety products, what have you. They can sign the petition. So that's an actionable item. And of course, you've mentioned Kurt Weldon. He's working with the Trump administration, or plans to be working with the Trump administration to get a task force.
Right. The commission. Yeah.
Yes. So those are definitely actionable items. So there's definitely hope, renewed hope going on here that we haven't seen since the 20th anniversary. So I know it's a long time coming, but I'm very grateful for everyone, including yourself, for sticking with it. Even though it can be disheartening, we feel like our numbers are dwindling. So many 9/11 chapters have gone by the wayside. Boston 9/11 Truth, back in 2020, I think it was. Help me out, Al. When did we do that, the mailings to all the fire chiefs in Massachusetts?
Well, it was at least a couple of years ago now.
Yeah, I think it was more like 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. But anyway, we mailed out, I believe it was 444 packets to firefighters. We did mail DVDs, which unfortunately are obsolete now. But also Architects and Engineers flyer, and Chris Joyous, what was it called?
Justice for 9/11 Heroes.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't called that. It was called something else. I can't remember right now. But anyway, we mailed out his statement on 9/11 Truth for the fire department that he had there, and which again, the name is escaping me. And
that would be the mutual aid request.
Mutual aid request. Thank you. That's what it was called, the mutual aid request. And also the Halsey report from Alaska. We didn't get any response, but then again, we didn't include in the flyer, in the packet, how they, it wasn't clear how they could respond to us. So we're not sure how many we actually tipped over the edge. But there are definitely some things going on. Now, before we get to the Q&A, um, you talked a little bit about Bob Bowman. Bob Bowman was definitely a larger than life
Yes.
person. And he did a lot of outreach to both conservatives and progressives, which was really key instead of the divisiveness we're living with today. Can you talk a little bit about Bob Bowman and your experience with him?
Yes. Bob Bowman was a bigger than life, a great man, and his credentials, his pedigree, you couldn't ask for more. And of course, the morning of 9/11, he knew it was BS. He was an interceptor pilot at one time. And he was an actual rocket scientist, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist to say a fire cannot blow up buildings into dust and make them fall in perfect symmetry and free fall speed. And um, but the 9/11 terrorism, that was the what was being fed to the American people to be okay with this war of aggression. And I believe, Bob was a celebrated member of Veterans for Peace and the anti-war movement since Veterans for Peace began in '85, because he had been a whistleblower against the Star Wars programs being used as offensive weapons. And but when the war was starting up, uh, they were building up to it. I believe Veterans for Peace and the anti-war movement as it was, all they had to do was put Bob Bowman out in front and let him take all the arrows, because it couldn't be argued, especially by with a guy like Bob, and his pedigree and his experience. Um, and instead, they couldn't get they threw him under the bus. They ridiculed him. And that's why I believe the anti-war movement was corrupted. And but anyway, Bob, you mentioned conservatives and um, uh, left-leaning folks. Bob was a member of Veterans for Peace, which was pretty much a very left organization. But in 2009, when Obama first came in, April 19th was Patriots Day or whatever it is, the Lexington and Concord, and that's when the right-leaning group of veterans, Oath Keepers, was formed. And Bob Bowman uh, went and gave a speech in Tampa, Florida that very day and joined Oath Keepers. So here he was a member of both the Veterans with Oath Keepers and the Veterans for Peace. And he was a combat veteran. He was a Vietnam veteran, and his credibility was very high, and he tried to get them, the Oath Keepers, to add one more order they would not obey. They had a list of 10, and Bob wanted them to add refuse to participate in an illegal war, war not with congressional authority. And they wouldn't have it. And this whole left versus right divide, Bob tried, and he was our chapter had the same approach as Bob and the same beliefs. uh, we were pretty nonpartisan. And it was a crying shame that how Bob was just thrown under the bus by Veterans for Peace and the anti-war movement over the years. He had battled cancer for years from exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam, and uh, he would go out on his summer tours in the motorhome for years. He just gave everything. Now, here, Bob, he was he retired in 78 from the Air Force, and he just had gotten into private industry where he could finally make a few dollars. And he had 7 kids that I'm sure they wanted to go to college, you know. And it was in the early 80s, and I think it was back then even Rumsfeld and Cheney were around then, and they were calling for the Star Wars program became public, and they wanted to use it as an offensive weapon. The uh, the high brass in the military at the time couldn't speak out against it, so they called Bob as the former director of the program to come in and be a whistleblower and speak against the dangers of this program being used as an offensive weapon. And Bob did that. He left that job, you know, the job that was going to give him a decent paycheck and maybe send his kids to college, uh, and he left that to speak out of it, you know, and then face death threats, IRS audits, and totally ostracized by the military community, just totally ostracized. And that's but he did it anyway, and he did it right up to his dying day, you know, fighting for the truth. And he was very much bothered by people being killed on a lie. And uh, and Bob was just a great man. I was so glad to have known him and worked alongside him. Um, and I know you, Sue, you and Mia Hamill, when Bob was here in Florida, we had the service for him. The two of you drove all the way through the night, all the way down to Florida to be there for the service.
Well,
You,
truth be
you,
told, we stopped in DC.
there you go. Right. Okay.
So
But
it wasn't
you
all
guys were,
straight through. That would be 34 hours driving.
yeah, but you guys did a lot of driving to get down here, and you made
Oh,
it. And it's he was a great man. And yes, when he passed, we renamed our chapter the Colonel Bob Bowman Memorial Chapter. And and then when we left Veterans for Peace in 2016 January, and we reformed as a chapter of We Are Change, which is a lot more nonpartisan, and we named it the Dr. Bob Bowman Memorial Chapter. It's since fizzled away, but over time. But that's I guess we all, you know, there's probably plenty of us in the chat here who could tell Bob Bowman experiences with Bob Bowman, but he was a great man. And he could have been, if he was used as he was volunteering himself. I believe we had opportunities to blow the lid because of 9/11, to blow the lid off of this and prevent those wars. And I can give other examples over the years where we could have done something. And uh, it's a shame. It's a shame that Bob was not utilized. He could have, I believe, could have stopped the war if the anti-war movement had just put him out front and let him take all the arrows. And but anyway, I'm babbling.
no, I hear you. I was, a little tear was coming to my eye. My video's not working for some reason tonight. Sorry about that. But yeah, there was, you know, he holds a special place in my heart, and I'm sure he's got a special place in heaven right now. Before we go to the Q&A, I know I said there was one question, but there was one other thing. I talked with Barbara Honegger last night and mentioned that you were going to be on. And
Yes,
I did not know this. You were involved in that third beam.
third
Tell us
beam.
that
Oh,
story,
yes, that
please.
was, oh, what a gas that was. And I emailed to you the article that tells the story. Um, Central Central Floridians remember WTC Building 7. And this is where we also could have stopped the war. This um, Barbara Honegger, for years, the New York City on 9/11, they'd have two high powered spotlights beam up into the sky representing the Twin Towers that came down. And Barbara and architects and engineers in 2010 had the idea of doing a third beam, you know, and they needed Barbara research where you could get these high powered spotlights that would be enough juice to create the beam. Two of them were in Orlando and two of them were up in upstate New York. And they reached out to me. I think it was Les Jameson and Phil, you know anybody in Florida that could drive these things up? I said, yeah, me, you know, and myself and Brett Bracewell, we drove them up and it's a funny article. I don't know if we were able to post it in the chat or something like that, the PDF of it, but uh, we drove the lights up and then that Friday, Niels Harrit, this scientist over in Europe, they had a peer-reviewed paper stating that there was nanothermite found in the dust from the World Trade Centers, the blowing up. You know, they proved that there was explosives, and he had just done a press conference with Richard Gage in at the National Press Club in D.C. that Friday. They drove up, and they were having this 9/11 Truth Convention 3-day deal like they would do every year. And all kinds of panels and experts and this was all presented and the anti-war people right in there, you know. But what happened was the I think it was the night of the Saturday, September 11th, 2010. At 9/11, those beams went up, and then the third beam went up. It was these four spotlights were in the back of a rent-a-wreck pickup truck that Steve White and some others at Barbara they rented, and it was right down there, and the TV stations were getting calls, and you know, the whole city and anyone watching had to see that third beam. What is the third beam for? Well, it's World Trade Center 7. And I think it was a great idea in World Trade. But also at the same time that was happening was they something had stirred up. There was this crazy reverend that wanted to burn the Koran because there was plans supposedly to build a mosque on the site of where the World Trade Center was or close to it. So there, you know, you had your Fox News saying, you know, how dare they, blah, blah, blah. Then you had the lefties, the anti-war movement saying, you know, you're racist. And this was the anti-war movement, big name people that commanded media, national, international media. There was going to be a big standoff the next day, but at the very same time, Niels Harrit, Richard Gage, and all were down below the new Building 7 to present the evidence of nanothermite blowing up the buildings, you know, and all these people had to do, and they would sit and the anti-war people known all along, you know, that 9/11 was in anyone that they participated in the conferences and all. Actually, the big name woman that everybody knew and always had media following her, right in the seat in front of me, you know, the night before at these the panels. And but what happened was, it was all they had to do was walk down 2 or 3 blocks to the Building 7 in that press conference where nobody was, and tow with them the New York Times and all the international press. And we could have just stopped the war, blown it up right there, man. But it was more important for the lefties to call the righties racists than stop the war. You know, I could go on. There's so many different examples of things like that. We were so ripe for it, and as it turned out, the next day in the New York Times, and it might still be online, not just the print Times, but the video section online, huge coverage of the left fighting the right over this mosque thing.
Yeah.
And if the media, all they had to do was, and I believe one of the key speakers who was very much aligned with us, 9/11's a false flag attack. It's the basis for these wars. We need to expose 9/11. I believe this person had said, "Why don't we just walk down there?" And the person who had organized the protest said, "Absolutely not," and because it was more important for them to call the Fox News watchers racist. And meanwhile, the war went on. That was 2010. Opportunities like that, Bob Bowman opportunities. So, but that was a gas to see that third beam go up, and the spotlights were in a pickup truck, and
I had no idea you were so instrumental in that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that.
You bet.
At this point, I want to open it up to questions. So raise your electronic hand and then unmute yourself when you're called upon. Magnus has his hand raised. Go ahead, Magnus.
Yes, thank you for coming today, Phil. You were doing an amazing presentation here and good talk here. We are all doing the best we can. I'm a $500 co-producer for 9/11 Crimes in the Courtroom. Have you heard about that film before?
No.
Oh, Richard Gage is making 9/11 Crimes in the Courtroom now.
Yes.
So I'm a part of making that film along with him. So go to 911c2c.org.
Okay. Yes, I do get the emails. Thank you.
Cool. When did you actually get involved in all this stuff?
In the summer of 2005, I was already involved in the anti-war movement, because I got involved with that because the reason they said for the war in Iraq was that there were weapons of mass destruction that were going to come to the US, and then there weren't any. And actually, in this 2006, every year the national White House Correspondents' Dinner, the black tie, all the president gets roasted, and all the senators and congressmen and the big media people, it's black tie and everything. And at this particular time, George Bush did a slideshow of him looking behind a curtain, no weapons of mass destruction here, ha ha ha, looking under the desk, and it was obscene. We had kids coming back in body bags every day, and all the TV news people are laughing, the senators and congressmen, Republicans and Democrats, all laughing, and that didn't get the American people to stop that was obscene, and that really helped. That was but 05 is the year before is when I got involved with the speaking out against this obscene war based on lies. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Magnus.
All right, and next we have Jean and Sandra La Rotunda. Go ahead and
nice to meet you, Phil. Fantastic. That's amazing activism. Man after my own heart, or I should say I'm a man after your own heart. We do the same thing, handing out flyers, leaflets, whatnot. We have the business cards. I stick them everywhere I can, and like gas station pumps and anything for people to grab stuff. So I love the ideas. I'm going to be buying a stamper now soon too. Uh, Question about the DVDs. Like now that we're where we are with QR codes, do you think it still would be valuable to make DVDs? And if so, how did you mass produce those DVDs?
Oh, well, first of all, I think we should s- investigate and start to implement something with the QR codes. I think a postcard, just a 3x5 or what have you, uh, double-sided, maybe laminated. I'm sure with volume you can get it around the cost of making a DVD like we used to. Um, we had a guy in Daytona Beach, this guy Joe D. He himself handed out 80,000 9/11 Truth DVDs.
Wow.
This is all in the early days, you know, and um, but I think yeah, I still have DVDs. People still have DVD players, you
Yeah.
know, and um, uh,
Boston 9/11 Truth has a DVD duplicator.
yes. Oh, that's the other part of your question. Yes,
Yeah.
we had a guy. We're on the corner every week, and you know, one time this guy pulls in the parking lot and says, you know, every week I stop by and I give you the thumbs up and a toot. He says, you know, I want to do. What else can I do? And he was an IT guy, and he was the one he took. He'd make a master DVD. We created one called "Questioning the U.S. War on Terror." It started off with Massimo Mazzucco's uh, the New American Century, which exposed the PNAC guys and the neocons, and then we had Zero, the Italian film questioning 9/11, and it had a New York City firefighter who was Italian, and he spoke in Italian and everything, and but it was good to have a European
Mhm.
documentary. Then there was the other. We had another film on it, Splitting the Sky, the Native American activist back then who did all the Googling and follow the money stuff. He went through all the insurance companies and all that. So we covered those three things: the neocons, uh, the PNAC guys, and the actual Zero, which really looked at the science of the buildings blowing up and all, and then the money part. And he made this for us, and then we, like Susan said, we got duplicators and just made labels and stuck the labels on them, and oh, every Thursday my girlfriend at the time, Kathy, and her son Brett, we were called that link that Sue sent out. It says Code Pink in 2014. Kathy was the Code Pink person when it when it was when it was more about ending the war and not being left versus right. Anyway, we'd spend hours every week, like 2 hours, putting together these packets, and we
Oh,
had ironing boards, you know, and
oh,
a assembly line, and we'd have about 50 packets for every Thursday. And
amazing.
um,
So
you guys know it takes work, and
real quick, one more. Who influenced you? Like 89 Truth didn't exist yet. David Ray Griffin was just getting off the ground. So who influenced you?
well, again, the war was obscene, you know, and then we met Bob Bowman,
Uh,
Colonel Bob Bowman, who, you know, he was speaking out against 9/11 since day one, you know. Um, and as I mentioned, in the summer of 2005, somebody gave me a DVD from the Power Hour radio show. It was called In Plain Sight, and it was a 9/11 Truth DVD. And Loose Change had just come out too, and loose change before YouTube, you had Google videos, and it was a lot more free then. There was less censorship, and it would have the top 10 movies, you know. Loose change was like always number one, you know. It was a big thing as far as waking people up and getting the message out. Vanity Fair did a big spread on them. They got on what was that? They got on what's her name? The lady, the Democracy Now, and had the debate with the filmmakers, had a debate with the popular science guys, the shows.
Amy
Amy
Goodman.
Goodman. Amy
Amy
Goodman.
Thank you. Yeah. So
Thank-
that's how I first got into the 9/11.
Thank you so much for leading the path here. This is all of what we are came from the work you did. So thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
and Sue Serpa and Mia Hamill and Boston 9/11 Truth, they were already doing their thing. They had Bob Bowman up there, and what they did, it was in the Boston Globe on page 1 of where they were throwing when the
Tea Party.
Party,
yeah,
right.
the commission report. It had
Yep.
all these holes in it, and they were dressed up as the Patriots or whatever, throwing the copies of the report
those were
in the
great
harbor.
days. I still
I
have
mean,
I still have a couple of those crates. I'm using them as coffee tables.
yes. And then Mia Hamill relocated to Florida, St. Pete, but she was one of the crew with Sue there. And I mean, there was a lot done in the early days. But the firefighters, when we do our event on 9/11, they drive by in the trucks and give us the finger, and
Well, I can tell you, we were at Ground Zero a couple years ago, and we were protesting, and the firefighters went by and gave us a thumbs up and a peace sign. So we're breaking through.
Yes. It was.
Fine.
I'm sorry, Sandra. Yeah.
And in every truck there was some goods that was either a peace sign or a wave or a smile or something. And we're looking like they knew.
Mhm.
And they supported us, they just couldn't say it.
Right.
So, Phil, Gene and Sandra also have the 9/11 War Room.
War Room. Yes.
Sunday, you're aware of that. Good.
Oh yeah, and you had Kurt Weldon on. That was pretty fiery, man.
Yeah, it did.
Jeez, that was yeah.
Yeah, I can just quickly ride on his coattails there. I remember you from the 20th anniversary. That's when I met you.
Yes.
You had contributed and donated, and you attended a couple of calls, and then you said, you guys don't need me to do this. I'm just going to keep on doing my own little thing over here, but I'm watching you and I'm supporting you and all that. So thank you for that. I do remember how kind you were at the time, and now it's just such a pleasure and a joy to see you in person and to listen to you and everything you've done. I mean, Gene and I were just like absolutely in awe because you walk the walk and you do it alone, and you do it against, so many odds. But what I wanted to say okay, yes, we need new blood. There's absolutely. But when you say it was, big back then, and now we have Tucker and Candace Owens and whatnot, but the difference is that we've come a long way. Yes. A lot of people have woken up, and it's not as contentious to speak about 9/11 today at all anymore. I don't meet anybody who says I'm a nut. If anything, they'll tell me, well, it's been 20 some odd years. What are you going to do about it? What difference does it make? So it's more like the apathy now. It's less the, oh my God, you're crazy, right? So I just wanted to point that out. So I think that cognitive dissonance thing is disappearing more and more. Now we just have to convince people that it still matters because the wars, because all the consequences, because the Patriot Act, so many things, right? So that's why we're still doing it, because we feel that it ties into everything, and like you, we feel that it's so easy to prove. You don't have to make it very complicated. You can if you want to, but keep it simple. So what I wanted to say also about the fire, like the whole Kurt Weldon thing, once he does present his initiative, we're hoping to find a lot of support from the firefighting community. Someone pointed out that the firefighters, that same brotherhood that did not allow them to speak,
Yes.
in agreement with us. If they start seeing the leadership turning around, and it's not just Kurt Weldon, it's other people very high at the top that are saying, you know what, I think the time has come to address this. If they see that, then that same brotherhood is going to start rallying around each other and saying, you know what, if they can step up, so can we. So once all of that is moving and we're just like in a bit of a wait period now, I think there will be a lot of firefighter initiatives that we can all get behind. And then, specifically try to keep you in mind that, if we're doing something, then yes, by all means, this is it. That's the website. This is what you can download. This is the message. This is what you can print out, and off you go, right? And so hang on to that, because I think that firefighter thing is going to come back like big time. And yeah, I just wanted to mention Paul Cayley. He was part of, the founders of Firefighters for 9/11 Truth, and very instrumental in Papa also. So that's what I wanted to say. The only thing I wanted to ask you is, did you know Michael Lurie?
I met him once. He knew Bob Bowman back
that's
in
why I'm
the
asking.
day.
Because but the very, very first time I spoke to Michael Lurie, it was just weird. We got into
Weird's a good word. Yeah. Sorry. Weird is an appropriate word.
Well, we got into a situation where we're talking. It was just on social media, and it went somewhere where he didn't want to discuss it, but he said, call me, And I was in a waiting room, so I was like, what the hell? I'm going to call him. And we had this, he's very much like you, like very open, humble, authentic, just, and I think it didn't take 20 minutes when he started talking about Bob Bowman. He loved him. And literally in that first conversation, we were on the phone, he started bawling, like crying, talking about Bob Bowman and how much respect he had for him and everything. So I just wanted to like let you know that he seconded that whole perception of him, and clearly Bowman was all that. So yeah,
And they knew each other academically back in California, and Michael was brilliant himself, and
in his own way.
And so that's how they knew each other going way back then.
Yeah, a very long time.
But as far as our group, you mentioned doing myself, we had a group, and man, I heard Paul and Raul rather, and Eric speak when they were being interviewed recently by Andy Steele, who's Andy Steele. God, we could praise him from here to next Tuesday.
Whoops.
Yeah, you just got muted.
I'm sorry. I'm where are you? There we go. Sorry about that.
Okay. But anyway, we had a group. It wasn't just me. And as I mentioned, and Susan put in the announcement both the attachment of this article, which I really think you'll get a kick out of, which talks about the third beam but also the 30-minute interview of Kathy Bracewell and Brett Bracewell. Susan has it with Kathy was a member of the leader of the Cold Pink chapter, which was also nonpartisan. We were all nonpartisan,
The only way.
And she gave us the name Team Bracino. My last name is Restino. Their last name was Bracewell, and it was a package deal, and she passed 2 years ago, but I hope folks will take a listen to that interview. But we had a group. We had a good group on the corner, and every Thursday afterwards, we'd go down to Steve's Diner afterwards, and even after we stopped the protesting, we still would get together at Steve's the first Thursday of the month, just to the friendships you made. Oh, back to Andy Steele and Raul and Eric. They talk about you meet some of the best people, the neatest people, by getting involved in this 9/11 truth. And I've met some great people. You guys, everybody, I'm babbling. Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. I mean, this was just really, really inspirational. We're going to take this a long way.
right, Al had his hand raised, but it's no longer raised. Did you still have a question, Al? Or a comment? Al? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, I'm gonna go to Trina, who has a question.
Oh,
Mute
Trina.
yourself.
Yes, hi. I was waiting to see if Al was going to speak also. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Trina. There's another one, Trina and 9/11 TAP. Oh
Yeah.
God, that's you guys. Go ahead, Trina.
Love you, brother. I
Yes.
remember I just want to thank you for coming on tonight and thank you for all the work you've done in so many different fields with the Veterans for for Peace, your USS Liberty work, your work on 9/11 Truth. You're just you're one of the most exemplary people I've ever met. So to go along with what you were saying, we meet some of the best people. So you're one of them. And I remember the year that you had called out for help over there in Daytona. And I don't know if you remember or not, but I drove over with Mia.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
with Mia and Claudia. And I'll never forget that time
You
coming over and
out on our corner, right? And then we
yeah.
went to Steve's Diner too.
Yeah, and yes, I'll never forget it, Phil. And you mean a lot to me.
Same, it's mutual, Trina. Thank you. And
Thank
all the
you.
work you're doing with TAP.
That's okay. We're all in it together. We're all
If you're
doing.
not on the 9/11 TAP Truth Action Project email list, please get on it.
Yeah, thank you. We're trying to do our part, and we're supporting here. I'm here to support everyone in the movement and all of the great people that I've encountered that are in this room even today. You're all wonderful in my eyes, and I just want to thank everybody, and especially you. You're dear to my heart. Can't wait to see you again.
Same here, Trina.
Yeah, Phil and I Phil was putting together. I know he's really tied up now with helping take care of his mom, which, that's just heartwarming in itself. And you're both in my prayers.
Thank you, Trina.
Phil has always arranged, well, not always, but several years too. We got together and went to the Rays ball game here with a bunch of 9/11 activists. Then again, after the ball game, we'd go out to eat. So. I just want to encourage people that may be listening to this call now or on the recording. When you do get involved, just plan to eat a lot and have some good laughs along with working hard. It just seems to come with the territory.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we have Al back. Al, go
Oh,
ahead.
yeah, sorry, had to run out for a second. Great work, Phil. I really enjoy this. Being an advocate for street action, I've listened intently in what you've done. I had a couple of questions. Have you ever, I don't know, recently with the Gaza protests, I personally think of our group, Boston 9/11 Truth, as an anti-war group. And I've been wanting to reach out to the anti-war community for a long time. And one of the things I have to say that I hadn't done, but to go out, and we had a lot of demonstrations this fall in Boston, and to use our signs in an appropriate manner. And we have signs 9/11 Truth for Boston 9/11 Truth for Peace, and something that wouldn't override their message and yet get us identified in these demonstrations that were going on all the time. It was a great opportunity, and we lack of membership participation, we didn't get out there. So I don't know if you've had any experience down where you are in penetrating that whole event, or they've had any events down there that you're aware of. That was one question. I'll keep going. are you on the community hub for all of the groups around the country that Gene and Sandra have put together? That's something that if we're looking to communicate with other groups, that we can go to, Boston 9/11 Truths there with all, some of the members. I'm on that, and I'll let Gene speak to that. But if you're not, it would be something I would think you'd really want to do. And then just the idea, I don't know if you have any personal relationships with the anti-war left. And I mentioned earlier before the meeting started that Marty Schatz, who we had on as a speaker here, he was with the Boston Community Church, and he's really an anti-war advocate. He's come to several of our meetings now, and I think he's been open to our message.
He was a guest speaker.
Yes, yeah, no, that's right. He was a guest speaker here.
And specifically addressing, how we can have outreach to the left and the anti-war.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to say. And I'd love to get you two together because, where you're veterans you're no longer veterans for peace. But, and that brings me to my final question. Were you ever aware of the veterans group up here in Boston? I think, Sue, who was it? Sheehan that used to run that?
No, Pat.
Scanlon. Pat
Scanlon.
Yeah.
Yes, the Smedley Butler's Brigade.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the one thing I always loved about, and they went to a lot of demonstrations when the Iraq War started, but they had those huge white signs with the peace symbol. Flags, right? Yeah, they weren't signs, but very impressive, and people couldn't help but be aware of them. They were attracted to those flags, and I always thought that was a great idea. You couldn't miss that from a mile away. But so anyway, those were my questions. But you're really talking to the choir here. I mean, a lot of what we've done is, parallels the things that you were talking about. And, we've done bannering, we've done over highways. We did,
front of the State House. You guys.
Yeah, the State House. We did the
aerial banner.
Aerial banners, which, and both the people in New York, and then we also had done it too. But so I don't know if you remember my questions now, but if you want to address any of those things.
Yes. Oh boy.
Too many to go over.
Well, could you repeat the first two, or remind me of I should have written this down. But,
well, obviously, you just nodded about Scanlon. So
yes,
you had communicated with him, or had you ever?
I've never met him in person. Our Veterans for Peace chapter started up in 2005, so we were. There had been chapters since '85, but it really didn't take off until Iraq was kicking off in '03. So
right.
We started up in '05, and we're, that was the earlier years of Iraq War, in which ran a good 10 years, if you think about it. And we had a very strong chapter. And as I mentioned, early on in '05, when we found out about the 9/11 truth, the whole thing being a false flag, that was the key to our work was, 9/11 truth stops the 9/11 wars. Actually, it was Harold Save in Gainesville, member of our chapter, who was instrumental in getting the resolution passed to call for an investigation in 9/11. It was also our chapter that was got the resolution passed to impeach Obama, the Democrat, for doing the same thing the Republican did, and we took a lot of heat, but we didn't go away, much like Gene and Sandra and yourself and Boston 9/11 Truth. We didn't go away, and we're staying with it. Um, but yeah, the anti-war left, Al, was we really had a lot of resistance. It just couldn't go there, and the answer we used to get. I remember Kathy with Cold Pink. We went up to this big thing in 2007, January of 2007 in DC, and her being a chapter leader, she was involved with all the national, and she asked them, if 9/11's the reason for the war on terror, why aren't we exposing 9/11? And the answer was we don't want it to affect our credibility and take us away from our message. And it, to you and I, and probably everyone in this chat, that just is asinine. It doesn't make sense. But we also recognize over the years that it's a career ender, and these organizations, they're looking for funding, they're looking for membership, they're looking to get along with others, and all these concerns outweighed the primary mission, I believe. And I think I think much like just the 9/11 Truth outreach, if they're not with you, move on to the next. It's a crying shame that the two don't come together. There shouldn't be two in the first place. But that's as far as the anti-war left. I hope I answered that or addressed that question. Boston's Vets for Peace chapter, the Smedley Butler chapter, was one of the really strong chapters in Vets for Peace, as well as your Boston 9/11 Truth. As far as the chapters around the country, you guys were like the pioneers, early on, and what you've done, other chapters like ours would try to replicate in our own communities. And 9/11 TAP, Truth Action Project, with the tents, the whatever they were called. You guys set it up in front of the State House, and none of this is lost on us. And but I'm sorry, Al, I can't recall your first
Well, the
question.
question was regarding Gaza and the
Gaza, yes.
and whether you've done anything with that.
Right. And actually, I was on a similar call this morning that I'm a member of this group called Partners for Palestine here in Florida. And there's a fella that facilitates it up in Orlando. I'm in South Florida now. I had to move down to Jupiter in December of 23 to take care of Mom. In Daytona Beach, 3 hours north, is two different worlds from Palm Beach County, South Florida, as far as demonstrating, period, let alone criticizing Israel. You get down here, it's they call Palm Beach County the sixth borough. New York City has 5 boroughs, and they call Palm Beach County the sixth borough. We've got a lot of New Yorkers and folks from New York that don't like Israel being criticized, and I have not been involved in any activism outside of my keyboard down here. But if I was back in Daytona, believe you me, we'd be out there on the corner. One other thing now is I think the January 6th thing with however you whatever side you take on that, what came of it was just, and it was more evident in the students demonstrating against the genocide in Palestine is the crackdown on dissent, where you could actually just round up people for attending something. And when you actually, when unfavorable speech is considered, breaking the law, I don't, I no longer see bumper stickers on cars. Very rarely see people in the streets anymore as far as protesting on the corner down here. Um, but if we were up in Daytona Beach, I would certainly myself be out there trying to get something going as far as demonstrating against the U.S. backed genocide in Palestine.
The last question I had was, are you on the community hub?
No, I don't believe so. And I don't know if I'm no longer representing a group. I'd be happy to be on it if I could, as an individual, though.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
no, that's what.
you can do
Okay.
it as an individual.
Okay, yes. Actually, I was looking at that this morning. And Ted Walter is part of this group, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it's not
9/11.
much a group as it is. It's a directory, if you will, an
Directory.
directory where anybody can list themselves with their geographic location. The minimum we require is just the city, I think.
Yeah.
Your name.
That's how I found it. I found it by clicking on 9/11 International something or other, where Ted Walter was part of that organization, and it led me to this.
That could be, yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah, it's Gene's initiative. He'd been dreaming about setting this thing up for a long time until he made it happen. And
Gene, way to go, Gene.
yeah.
Man,
it'd be nice to get 10,000 people on this map, but we'll
yeah, we need to promote it better. We're terrible at that. But I mean, the whole idea is to see, who's in your area,
Yes.
someone that you weren't even aware. So, when you're, I don't know, we have 100 or 200 people now. But I mean, if you had 10,000, then yeah, you'll find who lives in your own backyard and who you can connect with that maybe you didn't even realize. So it's not even about the groups. It's really just about personal, you can put as much information as you want.
There's an idea for a stamper.
Yeah.
911communityhub.org.
Yeah.
There you go.
Find us in your neighborhood. 911community.org,
Yeah.
hub.org, or whatever, and if we ever come up with a postcard, laminated, double-sided with QR codes and not too much information, you don't want to have too much. I mean, just look at the design, the 9/11 Truth action groups, websites, advocates. It's not overwhelming. It's not busy.
Right.
A postcard like that with a QR code here and something like that.
Well, I mean, for the community hub, I think ideally it would be word of mouth, because if we start doing that publicly, we're going to attract every lunatic who wants to derail us.
True.
Maybe not that, but for flyers and stuff, definitely. And
hey, Manny and Barbara and Richard.
Genius at finding everything.
Oh, that's right. There's Brett Bracewell. Oh, I hope if we can get this PDF into the chat where you guys can read it. Oh, that's Kathy.
Thought you'd like it. And one for Al. This is what they did.
Oh, yes.
What year did you guys do this? That was
20th anniversary.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. So
2021.
A lot of good memories there. Pretty cool.
Yes.
Yeah. So Trina has her hand raised again. Go ahead, Trina.
Hi, thank you. I was just wondering if you had any ideas, Phil, how we could resurrect the demonstrations and the truth booths this summer when winter leaves us and we're back in springtime and summertime, where we could do more activism. But honestly, I was going to ask, I don't see any activism anywhere. No protests on the corner. about Gaza or anything else. It's just non-existent that I see in my area, in the Tampa Bay area. And I was wondering, I don't think it's limited to just Palm Beach County. I don't know where all the protests or um, activism corners are. If anybody has any ideas, I'd love to hear about that. And also, if you have any thoughts on uh, getting more material out regarding Kurt Weldon, the specifics we could work with Jean and Sandra and Susan and Alfred to put together some type of card with QR codes on it or a trifold even uh, to put out the new information. So, do you have any ideas on rejuvenating protesting?
Yeah, that's a tough one. People are afraid. I mean, the government is really clamped down, and the censorship, and we're just people are afraid. Uh, uh, but I do know from this morning's online discussion with the Partners for Palestine, they had participated in Martin Luther King uh, parade on Monday in Orlando, different events like that where they show up, and they had their free Palestine flags and handed out a couple of hundred of them in no time. If we have a little flyer or a postcard or something, I believe showing up to those things and um, exchanging numbers, have a little memo pad or whatever, get somebody's number and follow up, when you actually speak with an individual and I'm a big one for leaving your contact information on whatever you pass out. But it's tough after the January 6th thing, and then to see what happened when the students demonstrated against the genocide in Gaza, the crackdown. It's they've in making speech illegal, certain speech illegal. It's just getting harder and harder. But I think, like you, Trina, the answer is to get out there and if we don't use our rights, we lose them. But to start, I would say getting going to other events that are already happening where there are going to be people. Martin Luther King parade, Earth Day thing coming up in April probably, and just showing up for that. And that's how we used to get members for our Veterans for Peace chapter. We'd go to different events, and then you end up talking to somebody and getting a number. And you get a new member.
Thank
Next thing
you.
you know, you got a chapter. Next thing you know, you got a weekly demo or something.
Thank you. Earth Day would be a great opportunity to hand out flyers, all the flyers I have on chemtrails and
Yeah, oh boy.
geoengineering.
Yeah. Well, Bobby Kennedy, by the way, is he's hip to that. He had an interview with Dane Wigington when he was running for president. And
Right.
so
Earth Day would be a great opportunity for that. That would be a great door
yes,
opener. Thank you for that idea.
you bet.
I think since COVID, people don't get together like they used to. You don't even see funerals anymore.
Yeah.
I know, and I feel very isolated these days. I'm
Yeah.
really grateful for just this online contact that I'm having, but I'm very much jonesing for the personal connections, the community, uh, just even the people in my area. Really, Jason King and Mia Hamill. I think Jason moved out of the area, if I'm not mistaken. And just, it's just like, Michael's gone. Michael Lurie, rest in peace. He was in my area here briefly before he passed, and he and Matt Van Slyke and I I met those two
God bless.
here in Tampa about 2 years ago. I think it's been by now. But it's just like it just seems like people just aren't around anymore. And just I don't know, just I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the isolation, like you said, Sue. Since COVID, people
The
just aren't.
COVID, yes.
Since COVID, yeah, people just aren't getting out like they did. It doesn't seem like. Maybe I'm just not in the right circles, but
Well, that's what I
looking for
think.
those circles. Let's put it that
Yes,
way.
and that's the thing. Keep an eye and an ear open for events,
Right.
where people are gathering, because there's so few, instead of trying to make one happen, show up to one
Right.
and try to get a number,
Right.
so.
Oh, and I have it real quick. If I could pivot real fast, just 2 seconds to Jean. Jean, at one point, I remember, I think it was around a year ago, you had mentioned that you were going to try to work out something where you could connect the community hub, where there would be connectivity to insert that player or plug-in or whatever it might be called. You know the terms, I don't. With making that happen on different websites. We'll talk about that maybe tomorrow offline, but
That just got too complicated. It's either easier just to link to the website.
perfect. Okay. Maybe we can talk about that tomorrow at some point on where you think I should put that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So David Schlesinger has his hand raised. Go ahead, David.
Oh, there's a name from the past. Hi, Dave.
Hey, good to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have an idea for an action that is on a different issue, which it doesn't need to be mentioned. But nobody in this country but me thinks it's valuable to go to jail. But when I did this 5 years ago, where I live now, the judge refused to give me a sentence. And that is, and this is an advanced version of what I did 5 years ago. You go to a high school, and this is very Gandhian. You go to the principal's office, you're dressed up, go to the principal's office, you hand a note to who's ever at their desk, and you say, I'm here to get arrested for leafleting on the issue of, in this case, 9/11. And out of respect for the fact that people who administer schools deserve a lot of respect, and they shouldn't have to deal with chaos any more than they normally do. I will wait until you have some police officer available to arrest me after the first leaflet I hand out. And when you go to court, you plead guilty. And that's Gandhi's approach. And the important aspect of Gandhi's approach is that you don't want to frustrate the adversary. Almost all people who protest, that's their main point, to frustrate the adversary. But Gandhi's approach is he hoped that after the struggle's over, he could be friends with the adversary. King felt the same way. So I'll be shocked if anybody takes me up, but please be in touch if you like that idea.
Thanks, Dave.
That kind of reminds me of another question that flew into my head and flew right out again, and I forgot it. Were you involved in the counter recruitment movement at all?
No, and we did have some of our chapter members up in Jacksonville do that. Our chapter was wide. We covered a large territory, and you'd have a handful of people in each city, maybe. And the fella up in Jacksonville was a retired career Army colonel, and they had a couple of guys that went into the school system. Myself, again, I was just in the Army for 2 years, peacetime. I wasn't a model soldier or anything. It was difficult for me to participate with other veteran activities because I in a way I hadn't been there. I hadn't done that,
Right.
Again, when I first started the chapter, or there were co-founders. I was a co-founder of the chapter. my hope was that a war veteran would take the lead, and it just never happened. So for that reason, to give it more credibility and maybe list amongst the other war veterans.
Yeah, somehow they seem to think that being patriotic is going along. Yeah. Well,
So, it's almost 8:30.
yes, that's I was going to go there.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Phil, for joining us.
Thank you, Sue.
We're going to put this out on Rumble, and for those of us who weren't able to join us tonight, you have a second chance when we publish this on Rumble. And very, very appreciative for all your hard work over the years.
You as well, Sue.
It's been an honor.
Same here, Sue, and all of you folks. Believe you me, we've been watching Boston 9/11 Truth for years, and you guys have been an example to many of us around the country. So, and it's good to see everybody still here. You know, one day at a time.
It is a wonderful community, sometimes
Yeah.
dysfunctional, but really
Yes.
you meet the best people this way.
You do.
Really do. Thank you.
Thank you,
We're
everybody.
going to move along to the next part of our meeting, which is our local agenda items. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you very much.
Thank